jail. Of course, now it's largely forgotten that the initial reaction to the 1916 Rising was discussed by the people of Ireland. They were not in favour at all. And it's said that some of the leaders, when they were being brought away, when they were captured after the failure of the Rising, that a lot of the people of Dublin spat at them. But of course, this negative attitude was completely changed when they executed the leaders. And it led to a huge enlistment of young men like my father and his brothers. So my father and the brothers joined the Trim and Longwood Volunteers, and some of them joined the IRB, which was the Irish Republican Brotherhood. It was a secret oath-bound society, and its aim was to establish an Irish Republic. The Catholic Church condemned the organisation, and members were to be refused the sacraments and excommunicated. But the great thing was, it was a secret organisation, so nobody knew who they were, so the church didn't know who to excommunicate. The GAA played a huge role all over the country in political matters. The Giles brothers were involved in hurling, and it's believed it was through the hurling clubs that recruitment of the Irish volunteers was the most effective. The GAA in most little villages was the main arena for drilling, and that's not oil drilling, that's army-style drilling. So my father and his brothers, their main involvement was in securing arms, and that was a big problem. There was the volunteers had no arms, and as you know, the RIC were in all the barracks around the little towns. So to overcome this, the local volunteers used to go around and demand shotguns and arms from anybody who had them. They used to go around, and then they'd go to the little local barracks and they'd raid the barracks. And a couple of cases, there was one at a place called Beniver, which is close to Longwood. They raided that barracks, and the volunteers approached the front door, and of course they were masked. And it was about 10 o'clock at night, knocked on the door and gave a password that the cops would know, or the RIC would know. And a young constable, Constable Agar, came to the door, and he tried to knock them out, and somebody shot him. He was shot dead, died immediately. So the volunteers were berated by the newspapers and again attacked from the pulpits of the church. And everybody felt very badly about anybody who was shot, because it was not the intent to shoot and kill anybody. One of the biggest raids was in a little town called Trim, which is in County Meath. This was organised from Dublin, and Michael Collins was in on the organising of this. It was a huge job. There was about 24 or 25 constables in the Trim barracks. So on the Saturday evening, all the trees were cut down on the roads leading into Trim to stop anybody else coming and helping out, other barracks coming and helping. So they scaled the barracks wall, and they rushed the back door of the barracks, and they were met by the head constable, Constable White, with his revolver drawn. And he was ordered to halt, but he refused, so he was shot. But he did not die. He was carried out, and they got him medical aid. The captured police were put in the lock-up room in Trim, and there was a great haul of 25 rifles and carbines, 20 shotguns, 6 revolvers, boxes of grenades, bayonets, and lots of ammunition. So the volunteers all returned to their little villages, exhilarated with the success of the whole enterprise, and there was great cheering all over the county. But then retaliation followed the day afterwards. The Black and Tans and 4 lorryfuls of uniformed police drove into Trim, and some of the town's prominent businessmen tried to approach the guys and say, please, no more reprisals. But at 4 o'clock in the morning, they began an orgy of destruction in the little town, and about a quarter of the town was gutted. The sad thing was, volunteers' parents were beaten up in their homes, and their houses were burned. My father was in charge of the arms for that particular enterprise in Trim, and that's how he was caught. His house, his living place, his living quarters were raided in Trim, and there was paper information found there, written information about the arms, because he tried to get the arms that they'd secured out to hide them in the farms around Longwood. But he was captured then, and he was sent away. He was court-martialed, And he spent 2 years in the Curragh camp in Kildare, and then he was in a British jail too. When the truce was signed in 21, the TANs and the RIC evacuated Longwood, and the volunteers took over the policing. And my uncle Nar became the adjutant of Longwood, and my father was released, and my uncle Pat was released too. That's about it. So I just brought along my father's sword that was from the Oaklina Heron, and his officer commission, and his medals, and his Sam Brown belt. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening.